The sound of the tires screeching against the wet road is still fresh in my memory. I remember the split second of panic, the harsh jolt of reality as the car veered off course. Everything went from sharp clarity to complete chaos, and then, nothing. I don't remember the impact itself, but I remember the silence afterward, an absolute stillness that seemed to stretch beyond time, beyond the moment of the crash. I didn't realize I was gone at first. At first, I just felt weightless. My thoughts, my consciousness, hovered as if caught between two worlds. I was aware of my body, but I wasn't in it. The pain, the tension, the terror, all had faded away, leaving behind only this strange sensation of floating. And then, a light. Not a bright light that blinds, but a soft, golden glow that seemed to wrap around me like a warm blanket. It wasn't just visible, it was felt. The warmth radiated through me, calming every fear I had ever known. There was peace here, an overwhelming peace. But it wasn't just the absence of pain, it was the presence of something far more profound. And there, before me, stood a figure. The figure was not like anything I had ever imagined. It wasn't a grandiose being with wings, or some divine creature from the stories I'd heard growing up. It was simply presence. The kind of presence that makes you feel both insignificant and infinite at the same time. It radiated a knowing that reached into the deepest parts of my soul. I could feel it, feel him, and yet, I couldn't describe what he looked like, exactly. It was as if the light itself was his form, his expression. I knew he was there, and he knew me. There was no need for words, but somehow, they came anyway. Do not be afraid, the voice came, not in sound, but in feeling. It filled me up like air filling a balloon, not suffocating, but giving me the space to breathe deeply. It was calm, steady, and full of love. It was his voice, but it wasn't bound by time or space. It resonated directly within my being, carrying a weight of wisdom and compassion. I have something to show you, he said, and I felt a stirring in my chest, both the anticipation of revelation and the dread of what it might bring. You are at a crossroads, not only in your life, but for all of humanity. What you are about to see will change everything you thought you knew about the world. You are about to learn what happens to those who live without faith. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. I could feel the flood of emotion swirling inside me, questions, doubts, confusion. I didn't even know if I believed. I had lived a life like many others, caught between the rituals of faith and the indifference of modern life. I was never against God, but I never truly chose him either. Without a word, the figure gestured, and before my eyes, the space around us began to shift. It was as if the entire universe opened up, revealing layers I had never imagined. The light around me remained constant, but now, there were visions. Images unfolding with breathtaking clarity. I saw a world, not unlike my own, but one that seemed to be steadily advancing, growing more connected, more reliant on technology. At first, the developments seemed harmless, just innovations that made life easier, more efficient. Phones, machines, artificial intelligence, everything seemed to promise convenience, security, a better future. But as I watched, something darker began to unfold, something I hadn't expected. The technology grew more intrusive, more personal, until it seemed to know everything about everyone. There were no more questions left to ask, no more boundaries between the individual and the world. People trusted the machines, trusted the systems that controlled everything. And in their blind trust, they became dependent, unknowing of the consequences. Then, I saw it. A symbol. A mark, something so small, so seemingly innocuous. It appeared on people's hands, their foreheads, everyone seemed to wear it without hesitation, as if it were a natural part of life. But when I looked closer, I saw the truth behind it. It wasn't just a mark. It was a chain. A chain that bound people to the system, to something far greater and more dangerous than they could ever have imagined. The mark was a symbol of surrender. Surrender to convenience, to the lies of security, to the illusion of control. It promised everything, protection, ease, prosperity. But in accepting it, they had sold their souls. The more they relied on it, the further they strayed from their creator, until they had lost their ability to even recognize the truth. I could feel the weight of the vision pressing down on me. The figures I saw, these people who had accepted the mark, didn't know what they had done. They were living in a kind of stupor, lulled by the promises of a world that was too good to be true. The more they took, the more they gave up. But it wasn't just their freedom, it was their connection to the divine, their spirit. And then I saw what became of them, those who rejected God, those who lived without faith. The light of their souls faded, and with it, their humanity. They became shadows of themselves, empty, wandering, lost in a world they could no longer comprehend. The figure's voice pierced through the haunting images. This is the consequence of living without faith. This is the path that many will choose, driven by fear, by pride, by the false promises of security. But it is not too late. You must understand that you have a choice, just as they do. You can choose faith. You can choose me. I wanted to speak, to ask questions, but the weight of everything I had just seen held me silent. My heart felt heavy, my mind racing. There was so much to take in, so much to understand. I had never thought much about faith, about God in a personal way. But now, here in this moment, it was all so clear. The choices we made, the faith we carried, were not just about us. They were about everything. About the world, the future, the souls of those who would come after us. The figure paused, as if waiting for me to process everything. I could feel his gaze on me, and it was filled with compassion, not judgment. It was as if he understood my confusion, my doubts, but he was offering me something more. Choose wisely, he said softly. The time is coming when the world will try to deceive you. It will offer you everything you desire, but at a great cost. Do not be fooled by the promises of convenience. Choose faith. Choose life. The figure's form began to fade, but the words lingered, hanging in the air, like a soft echo. I felt a pull, like I was being called back. The visions, the feelings, the overwhelming truth, they all began to recede, as though the door between worlds was closing. But I wasn't ready. I needed to know more. I needed to understand. And just as quickly as I had come, I felt myself being pulled back into my body, back into the world of pain and confusion. But even in that moment, I knew that I had seen something far greater than I could ever explain. And I couldn't unseen it. My life would never be the same again. I woke with a start, gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The crash, the vision, the figure, they were gone. I was back in my body, back in the world. But I felt different. The quiet hum of the hospital room, the beep of machines, felt alien, detached from the depth of the experience I had just lived through. I couldn't shake the feeling that something, no, someone, had just touched my soul, had revealed truths too profound to fully grasp in the moment. The light, the peace, the voice, it all lingered like a soft whisper in the back of my mind. I felt a growing sense of urgency, as though the moments I had experienced weren't just visions, they were warnings. Warnings for the world I had once known. Warnings for the future. And then, as if to answer my unspoken thoughts, the figure appeared once again. This time, I wasn't caught off guard. I felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over me as his presence filled the room. The divine figure stood before me, not as a distant vision, but as a tangible reality. There was no blinding light, no flash of brilliance, only a stillness that enveloped me, a peace that surpassed all understanding. You have seen a glimpse of what is to come, he said, his voice a gentle echo inside my mind. Now, you will see more. You will understand how the world will change, how humanity will choose its path. And you will witness the gradual acceptance of the mark. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. His words didn't need to be questioned, they were truths that resonated deep within me, even as I struggled to fully comprehend them. The figure raised his hand, and once again, the visions began. This time, the images weren't just abstract, they were clear, vivid, like watching a movie unfold before my eyes. I saw a world much like my own, but different in subtle, unsettling ways. Technology was everywhere. People didn't just use their phones anymore, they lived through them. Social interactions had shifted, becoming more virtual, more automated. People were no longer bound by physical spaces, but connected by an invisible web that reached into every corner of their lives. But something darker lingered beneath the surface. The technology that promised to make life easier, more convenient, was beginning to replace the things that truly mattered: human connection, empathy, the spirit of individual choice. People no longer had to think for themselves, the systems thought for them. Decisions were made in nanoseconds, optimized for efficiency, for comfort, for progress. But the cost of this progress wasn't visible at first. It was hidden, subtle, like a slow poison, creeping into every part of life. And then, I saw the mark. The small, seemingly insignificant symbol that would come to define everything. It wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a solution, a promise that society was desperate for. The mark appeared in the form of a small chip, implanted under the skin, a device so advanced that it seemed like a miracle. No longer would there be the need for passwords, for keys, for wallets. Everything could be done with a simple scan: purchases, travel, identification, even communication. It was a one-size-fits-all solution to a world that was rapidly becoming more chaotic, more uncertain. The mark offered everything: security, efficiency, comfort. It was the future, and it was irresistible. It wasn't pushed on people forcefully at first, it was sold to them as the answer to their problems. People were told that it would keep them safe, that it would protect them from the dangers of an increasingly unpredictable world. It was the ultimate convenience, the final step in human progress. But as the vision unfolded, I saw what lay beneath the surface. As the world slowly embraced this new reality, they began to change, not physically, but spiritually. People didn't even realize it at first. The first few generations felt the benefits of the mark. They no longer had to worry about hunger, about safety, about the burdens of living. Everything was automated, taken care of. They lived in a state of constant comfort. But there was a cost. The mark wasn't just a tool for convenience, it was a chain, a binding force that linked people to a system that ultimately didn't care for them, a system that stripped them of their soul's autonomy. With each passing year, the grip of the system grew tighter. The more they embraced technology, the more they grew dependent on it. People lost their ability to think critically, to question, to choose freely. They were not free, they were controlled, not by their own will, but by a vast, invisible network. And the most terrifying part was how easily they were deceived. At first, the mark was voluntary, offered as a choice. But as the years went by, more and more people chose it. Because it seemed so simple, so obvious. Why not? It made life easier, better. How could something that offered so much be wrong? But the consequences were hidden. The more people accepted the mark, the more they gave up their connection to the divine. The more they traded their souls for security, the less they could feel the truth, the less they could see the love that still waited for them. The mark was a perfect trap, a promise of paradise that slowly, imperceptibly, eroded everything sacred. Faith, love, compassion, they were replaced with systems, with algorithms, with efficiency. And in the end, it wasn't just a technological downfall, it was a spiritual one. The figure's voice cut through the vision, soft, but full of weight. This is the deception, the subtlety of the world you are entering. It will not come with an explosion, with obvious signs. It will creep in, inch by inch, until it has consumed everything. And those who accept it will not even realize what they have lost. I felt a deep sorrow within me as the vision shifted. I saw people, friends, family, slowly becoming more distant, more disconnected from each other. They were still there, physically present, but their hearts were elsewhere. In the pursuit of convenience, they had lost the ability to truly connect, to truly care. The world was filled with people who seemed to have everything, but felt empty, hollow, lost. Those who reject the mark, the figure continued, will be cast aside. They will be seen as backward, as unfit for the new world. But they will be the ones who hold on to the truth, who remember what it means to have faith, to truly live. I wanted to speak, to ask how we could stop it, but the words didn't come. All I could do was watch, helpless, as the future unfolded before me. The figure turned to me, his presence filled with a deep sadness, but also with hope. "You are not too late," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "You must prepare. The world is heading toward this future, but there is still time to change your path. The choice is yours." With that, the vision faded, and I found myself back in the stillness of the hospital room. But this time, I wasn't the same. The truth had been laid bare before me, and I couldn't ignore it. The world was changing, and I had to decide where I stood. As the figure's words echoed in my mind, I realized that the path ahead was more uncertain than I had ever imagined. But one thing was clear, the time to choose was now. The weight of what I had seen hung heavily in the air as I sat in that sterile hospital room. The visions, the divine figure, the warning, everything felt too real to ignore. I had been shown the future, but I still didn't understand how it would all unfold. The figure's words echoed in my mind, "The world will not fall all at once. It will be subtle. It will come slowly, piece by piece, until no one remembers what it was like before." The room around me seemed to blur, and I found myself once again transported, no longer in the hospital, but in a vast, crowded city square. It was familiar, yet foreign. I was standing on the street, surrounded by people going about their daily lives. They moved quickly, almost robotically, lost in their routines, heads down, eyes focused on the screens in their hands. But there was something else, something unsettling beneath the surface of their interactions. The air felt charged with a sense of urgency, as though the world was hurtling towards something inevitable, and no one even realized it. A low hum filled the space, and as I turned, I saw it, a giant digital billboard illuminating the sky. The message on it was simple but striking. "Welcome to the future. Live easier. Live safer. Live connected." Below, there was an image of a family, smiling, carefree, all connected by the same technology. The mark. I knew instinctively what it was. The same symbol I had seen before, now displayed openly on the screen. A calm voice spoke beside me. I didn't have to turn to know it was the divine figure. "Do you see it?" His voice was soft, but there was an undeniable urgency in it. I nodded slowly, unable to tear my eyes away from the glowing screen. "This is how it begins," he continued. "At first, it will seem harmless. People will be drawn to it by promises of convenience, security, and peace of mind. It will be portrayed as the answer to everything they fear. But the choice will not be so clear-cut. The deception lies in the simplicity of the offer. No one will see the cost until it is too late." The figures on the screen smiled, their eyes vacant, blissful, unaware of what lay beneath the surface. I saw images of people using the mark to pay for their groceries, to board public transportation, to make quick, painless purchases. It was seamless, effortless, just as the figure had said, a solution to the chaos of life. But there was something unsettling about the way everyone seemed so eager to adopt it. There was no hesitation, no doubt. They accepted it as if it was the only option. "Look closely," the figure urged, "and you will see the gradual process. The first step is easy. They will be told that it's only a small change. An improvement, a convenience." I watched as people around me used the mark, their skin subtly marked with the small chip beneath the surface, glowing faintly under the light. They moved through their lives effortlessly, as if they were free. But the freedom was an illusion. As the figure had explained, what seemed like liberation was actually dependence. I was transported again, this time to a different scene, a family gathered around a dinner table, laughing, talking, sharing a meal. It was heartwarming, familiar. But something was off. The father, looking tired, absent-mindedly reached for his phone. Without thinking, he swiped his hand across the surface of the device. The phone unlocked. No password, no face recognition, just a gesture. He continued scrolling, his attention now entirely consumed by the glowing screen. The figure spoke again, more somber this time. See how easily they give up their agency. At first, the mark is a tool, a convenience. But over time it becomes a crutch. People will be unable to function without it. They will be incapable of living without the connection, without the system. They will no longer feel the need to make choices or take responsibility for their actions. The system will take care of everything for them. I felt the truth of those words deep in my chest. The people were not living. They were simply existing in a state of artificial peace, a peace that came at the expense of their autonomy. The father didn't realize it, but he was slowly losing the ability to choose, to think for himself. His thoughts, his decisions, were being guided by the system, shaped by the convenience of the mark. But it doesn't stop there, the figure continued, the sadness in his tone unmistakable. As more and more people accept the mark, society will begin to shift. Those who reject it, those who cling to their faith, will become outcasts. The world will view them as backward, primitive, even dangerous. And the pressure to conform will grow stronger. I saw it then. The divide. The subtle way society began to isolate those who resisted. They were labeled as radicals, extremists, or worse, paranoids who couldn't see the future clearly. The public narrative would shift slowly, almost imperceptibly, but it would be enough to sway people toward conformity. Those who were skeptical, who questioned the safety of the mark, would be branded as obstacles to progress. The figure's voice grew more urgent. Those who do not embrace the system will be left behind. They will face persecution, isolation. And yet, they will be the ones who hold on to the truth. They will see through the illusion. I couldn't look away from the vision, my heart heavy with the weight of what I was witnessing. There was no outward violence, no immediate rebellion. Instead, the people who had embraced the mark would simply begin to forget what it meant to live freely. They would be drawn into the system without even realizing it, their connection to the divine, to each other, slowly diminishing. The promise of safety, of progress, would cloud their judgment, and soon, the concept of true freedom would be foreign to them. The figure's presence grew closer, his tone both gentle and stern. It is not enough to accept the mark with your mind. Your heart must remain strong. Your faith must be unwavering, even in the face of ridicule, even in the face of loneliness. You must hold fast to your beliefs. You must learn to discern the truth in a world that will try to blind you with convenience. As his words sank in, I began to understand the real challenge ahead. It wasn't just about avoiding the mark. It was about remaining true to myself, to my faith, in a world that would do everything to convince me that it was no longer necessary. The hardest part wouldn't be the external resistance, it would be the internal struggle to keep my heart aligned with the truth, to resist the subtle, persistent pull of a world that promised so much yet offered so little. I looked into the figure's eyes, searching for the answer to a question that burned in my mind. How do I prepare for this? He smiled gently, his eyes filled with compassion. Strengthen your faith. Build communities of believers. Cultivate your spirit. The world will try to pull you in, but if you are grounded in the truth, you will stand firm. With that, the vision faded, and I was back in the hospital room once more. But I wasn't the same. The truth had been revealed, and now I had a choice. Would I follow the easy path of conformity, or would I resist, knowing that the cost of freedom was higher than I had ever imagined? As I lay there, still in the sterile room, the weight of the choice ahead of me seemed more pressing than ever. I woke once again in the sterile white room, but this time, something was different. The weight of the past few visions, the warnings, the gradual acceptance of the mark, had left an imprint on my soul. It felt like the world outside was pressing in on me, its noises and distractions drowning out the quiet truth I had learned. But there was more, I knew. The divine figure's message was not just about what was coming, but about how I could prepare, how we could all prepare. As I sat up, a warmth spread over me, and once again, I found myself standing on that familiar, otherworldly plane. The light was soft and gentle, yet unyielding, like a sunrise that had never left. And there he was, the divine figure, standing before me, his presence as soothing as it was commanding. His eyes met mine, full of understanding, as though he knew what I was carrying inside. "It is time," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Time to understand what you must do. To prepare. Not just for yourself, but for others." The world around us shifted. I saw visions, not of a distant, desolate future, but of a small community, families gathered, friends working side by side, united by a single, unwavering purpose. I could feel the warmth of these people, their laughter, their shared moments of peace. It was an image of hope, of life lived with purpose. But there was something more beneath the surface, a quiet, steady resilience. These people were ready. They had prepared, not just in terms of their material needs, but in their hearts. "This," the divine figure continued, his voice a whisper in the wind, "is what you must build. A community of faith, of mutual support. People who share your values, who understand the importance of love, faith, and resilience. They will be the ones who will help each other stand firm when the world around them collapses." The vision shifted, and now I saw the people of the community engaging in practical preparations. They were planting gardens, storing food, learning basic skills, things that seemed simple, yet were vitally important. But it wasn't just the physical preparedness. They were also building something deeper: trust, understanding, and love. The community was a sanctuary, not just in times of crisis, but every day. It was a place where people came together to strengthen each other, where faith was practiced daily, not as a ritual, but as a way of life. "Prepare your spirit," the figure said gently, "and your body will follow. It is not enough to just be physically ready. The world will throw many temptations at you. It will offer convenience, comfort, even peace, but it will be a peace built on lies. The truth is only found in your connection to the divine and to each other." As he spoke, I began to understand more deeply. The world that was coming would not just be a physical battle, it would be a spiritual one. The pull of the mark, of technology, of a world that promised safety and ease, would be strong. The distractions would be constant. But there was a deeper strength to be found, not in fighting the world on its own terms, but in living a life that was anchored in something timeless. Faith, love, community. These were the foundations that would hold strong when everything else crumbled. The divine figure's gaze softened, and I felt a gentle nudge in my heart. Do not keep these lessons to yourself. Share them. Share what you have learned, and help others see the path forward. There will be those who will not understand, who will resist, who will laugh at what you say. But your words will plant seeds. You must speak the truth, even when it is difficult. I closed my eyes, and the vision shifted again. This time, I saw myself, not in the hospital room, but out in the world. I was standing on a street corner, talking to a group of people. They were listening, their eyes filled with curiosity, skepticism, even fear. But there was something in my words, in the way I spoke, that made them listen. It was not just the facts or the warnings, it was the love, the conviction in my heart that made them pause. I didn't have to convince them with logic or fear. I simply had to share the truth as I understood it, and let them come to their own conclusions. You must be prepared to stand alone, the divine figure said softly, but remember, you are never truly alone. I am with you. You are part of a larger, unseen community, those who will remain faithful, those who will not bend to the false promises of the world. They will find each other, even in the darkest times. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of this responsibility settle in my chest. It was clear now that the path ahead was not one I could walk alone. It was not enough to simply survive, it was about building something that would last, something that would endure beyond the temporary chaos of the world. Take what you have learned, the figure said, his voice steady and reassuring, and build a foundation that will stand. Not just for you, but for all those who will come after you. Teach them how to live with purpose, how to stay grounded, how to build communities of faith and resilience. The vision began to fade, but the message stayed with me, deep in my soul. I understood now. The challenge wasn't just to resist the coming changes, it was to build something better, something that would withstand the tests of time. A community of love, of faith, of preparedness. That was the path forward. And it wasn't just a task for the future. It was a call to action now. I couldn't wait for the world to collapse around me. I needed to start preparing, to start building, to start living according to the principles that had been shown to me. As the last of the vision faded, I was back in the hospital room, but I didn't feel the same. The weight of the knowledge, the urgency of the message, had given me a sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do. And I knew it wasn't just about my own survival, it was about helping others, about creating something lasting in a world that would soon forget the true meaning of connection. The divine figure's final words echoed in my mind, carrying with them both the weight of responsibility and the lightness of hope. Prepare, not just for yourself, but for all who will walk beside you. I stood alone on that vast, glowing plain. The soft light around me, once comforting, now felt distant, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The divine figure stood before me, his presence both comforting and profound, and I knew this moment, this time, was nearing its end. It was as though the earth, in all its turmoil and turmoil to come, was waiting for me to understand something deeper, something eternal. Everything that you have seen, everything that you have learned, will be tested, he said, his voice steady but filled with tenderness. The world will grow darker, and the trials ahead will be unlike any that have come before. But remember, even in darkness, there is always a possibility of light. Even in death, there is always the chance for revival. Your task is not to fear the coming storm, but to stand firm, to continue shining, even when everything else seems to be fading. The weight of his words settled deep into my soul. It wasn't the fear of the coming changes, the mark of the beast, the technologies that would deceive and destroy, it was the weight of the emotional burden of knowing that this time, more than any before, would test the essence of humanity's connection to the divine. And that, in itself, was a terrifying thought. Yet, despite the looming shadows, there was hope. There was always hope, he reminded me. The darkness does not have the final say, he said, his voice like a gentle breeze stirring the leaves of an ancient tree. Faith, love, and hope will always endure. But they must be nourished. They must be cared for. The seeds of revival lie within you, and you must plant them, nurture them, and spread them to others. I was overwhelmed. The divine figure had shown me so much, visions of what was to come, truths about technology, faith, and the dangers of the mark, but now, in this moment, he was asking something different of me. It wasn't just about surviving or resisting the inevitable, it was about bringing life back to a dying world. It was about bringing light to a world that had lost its way. You will face despair, he continued, and there will be times when it will feel like the battle is lost. The false promises will be everywhere, tempting people to choose comfort over truth, convenience over faith. But those who stand firm will be the ones who carry the light forward. You are not alone in this journey. Even in your darkest moments, you will find your strength. And you will find others who share the same strength. Together, you will be the beacon that guides the lost back to hope. A sense of peace, almost tangible in its presence, washed over me. The fear that had lingered, the anxiety about the future and the challenges ahead, slowly began to fade. The divine figure's words were not just a message, they were a promise. A promise that no matter how hard things got, there was always the possibility of revival, of transformation. The world may fall into confusion, into chaos, but there would always be those who remembered what truly mattered, faith, love, and community. The time will come when many will look for answers, he said softly, when the distractions of the world will seem too great to ignore. And in that time, you will be called to speak truth, speak hope. You must never stop sharing what you have learned, even when it seems like no one is listening. Your words will take root, even in the hardest hearts. You will not see all the fruits of your labor now, but know this, every act of faith, every act of love, plants a seed for a better future. And in that moment, I understood. The task ahead was daunting, but it was not impossible. I was not called to save the world, but to be a part of the revival, to carry the torch of truth even when the world seemed unwilling to see. My mission was clear now. It was to live with purpose, to build those communities of faith and love, to be a light in the darkness. I couldn't do it alone, but I didn't have to. We were not meant to walk this path as solitary beings. Together, we could face the darkness and push back against the lies, one act of faith at a time. Go back now, the divine figure said gently, with a renewed heart, with a mission. You will carry the message, the hope, the faith. And you will see, your mission will not be in vain. Though the world may fall, the seed you plant today will grow, and the revival will begin. You will not be alone. And there will always be light. The words echoed in my mind as the vision began to fade. I felt myself being pulled, back into the world, back into my own body, back into the life I had once known. It was strange, almost like waking up from a dream, only this time, the dream had changed me forever. I opened my eyes, the sterile white room of the hospital surrounding me. But everything felt different now. I felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from my chest. The knowledge I had gained, about faith, community, and the spiritual preparation I had to undertake, now burned bright within me. I could see the world differently now. The streets outside, the people I passed, seemed both foreign and familiar. The world was still the same, full of distractions, of noise, of people searching for something, often in the wrong places. But I knew my purpose now. I had been shown the way. It was time for me to walk it. It was time for me to speak the truth. The divine figure's words echoed in my heart, you are not alone. And there will always be light. And with that, I knew what I had to do. The darkness was coming, yes. But there was hope. And that hope would carry me, and all those willing to listen, through the trials ahead. With a deep breath, I stood. I was no longer afraid. And I knew that, no matter what the world threw at me, I would stand firm. I would be the light. I would bring the hope. The revival had begun. And I was a part of it.